Hello again. Scotland, which is pioneering the easy transition of men into women and vice versa, is heading, it seems, for another patch of turbulence, as hot on the heels of a rapist being sent to a women's prison comes the case of the alleged kidnapping of a little girl by a man or a woman, depending upon your point of view. The Scottish police seem to have abandoned their usual with-it notions regarding trendy matters like sex changes and have decided to behave as almost every right-thinking citizen wants them to, by cracking down on and using plain language about cases involving sexual offences or the abduction of children. When an 11-year-old girl who vanished on Sunday night was eventually tracked down to a house in the same town from which she had disappeared, the police announced almost immediately that they had arrested a 53-year-old man, a butcher, by the name of Andrew George Miller. Since this individual has for the last few years been living as a woman and was calling himself Amy, this was a terrible breach of what has become the standard approach when tiptoeing around transsexuals. That is to say, they unhesitatingly both misgendered and dead named him. For those who don't have all that many dealings with sex change cases, dead naming is when you refer to somebody by their real name, that is to say, the one on the birth certificate, rather than the pseudonym which they have adopted for the purposes of changing their gender. This was not at all like the Scottish police, and it might indicate something about which I talked the other day, that an increasing number of ordinary people seem to be growing tired of the more extreme manifestations of the trans movement. Like me, I think, the average person doesn't care in the least if a man wishes to put on a cocktail dress, wear high heels and change his name to Angelique. We might even, out of politeness, go along with the business and refer to him as she. Why not? It's harmless enough, and there are much worse things which a man could be doing, other than cross-dressing. However, when we see rapists in court or hear of a little girl vanishing, this thin veneer of acceptance seems somehow to fade away, and we feel more in the mood for calling a spade rather than a manual digging implement. Whether this is what has prompted the police in Scotland to speak plainly in this particular case, I have no idea, but it's certainly a welcoming development. Speaking purely for myself, I have an informal list of priorities in what I find important and worth getting worked up over. Very high up on that list, right at the top in fact, are vulnerable children and victims of rapists. I'm very much afraid that pussyfooting around the feelings of men who have an unfortunate psychological condition comes a long, long way further down that list of priorities. And when little girls go missing, they do rather trump all other considerations. I suspect that some similar process might be operating in the minds of police officers in Scotland in this present case. Of course, I have no idea if the man who has been arrested and charged has actually done anything, but I can see why the police have misgendered and dead named him. My private suspicion is that there is a lot more to this case than meets the eye, and that the police had even more cause than this to give his full name as soon as he was arrested. As usual, I give a link to a news item about this in the description to this video.